Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another one of our free Friday community classes right here on the Green Art YouTube channel. This week, I am excited to share with you Wortcunning and the Heathen soul. We will be looking at aspects of the self, the path of the spirit, and the power of personhood as they relate to our Wortcunning traditional and ancient Wortcunning practices. Now, we're going to go a little deeper in on this topic this week than we normally do. This is going to be a longer class, more akin to the advanced classes that I post over on our Patreon group, which I've got a link in the video deets down below. But look, as I tried to do a little introduction, a little overview of this topic to share with you here, maybe get you inspired, and then do something a little more immersive over on Patreon, it was impossible. I just could not kind of talk about this, right? So we had to go all in. So here you go, a full advanced style class, Wortcunning and the Heathen soul. And, even though we're going to go in pretty deep here, it's still just the beginning. We're still just scratching the surface of what all of this entails. I'm constantly researching and learning new things, realizing new things, seeing new connections. So this is a really big topic, one that I'm very excited to share with you. When you see where we get to go with this throughout the class, I think you're going to be really surprised. So for our syllabus, we will be focusing on concepts of self, who we are, what is a soul, what is our spiritual identity, as expressed in specifically Germanic and Anglo-Saxon paganism, but we will of course have some influence from the Norse and Scandinavian as well, right? Because the Anglo-Saxon, Scandinavian, Norse pagan traditions all come from the Germanic, which is one iteration of the Indo-European. So it's kind of that whole part of the world, that whole Germanic-rooted paganism, and the view of who we are as spirit, what the soul is, what the body is so incredible. It's very, very deep and very nuanced and very beautiful, and it informs really our work in Wortcunning, right? How we work with the herbs, how we bring the herbs into our life. So it's very important. We are going to have to talk about many different aspects of this before we can get to our actual focus for this class, which is the ways of well and the Wyrd. I want to talk about how we, as individuals, create patterns that then lead to our experience of the here and now, right? Everything that's happening in this moment is based on things that have been done in the past. Everything we do lays the groundwork for what's to come. So I want to focus on that aspect of the self, the soul, and also look at how our herbal allies and our Wortcunning work can influence both the well and the Wyrd. And we will, of course, be focusing as well throughout our entire class today on Wortcunning, the patterns, the path, and the power. This is really our focus. I will be doing other classes breaking down individual parts of the soul and the self. We're going to talk about 11 of them today. I want to do, deep dives into each of these in turn, but we're going to save that for later and focus on patterns, how those patterns manifest in the present, and how that relates to our personal power. One thing that I'm trying to get better at is remembering that this term Wortcunning is new to a lot of people. And I know that it is not the most appealing or sexy word, but it is a sacred term. It is a term that we've used for a very, very long time. It comes from the Old English binomial wert and cunning, right? And wort means a plant or an herb, especially a plant or herb that we have knowledge of, that we're in kinship or relationship with. And cunning means to have hidden knowledge or deep wisdom about. So when we talk about Wortcunning, we are talking about the practice of having deep wisdom regarding the plants, right? For both magic and medicine. And that will be informing our entire conversation today. So let's get started. The self as multifaceted. When we think about the spirit and the soul in a modern context, especially as influenced by large, late monotheistic religions, especially Christianity in the Anglo-Saxon world, we tend to see that there is one soul or one spirit that is distinctly separate from the physical body. This is part of their philosophy. It's part of their spiritual teachings that the physical body is inherently sinful or inherently capable of sinning, and that it is something that is temporary, and that ideally our focus should be on the spirit, the subtle aspect of self, which is the part of us that survives death in their concept of things and is the part of us that can transcend sin. And so that sort of duality of the physical, material, heavy, gross, sinful, illusory body, and then the light, subtle, spiritual, spirit or soul body is quite specific to those traditions, because when we look at the soul and the spirit in many of our ancient animist earth and nature centered traditions, we actually see that the self is conceived of as being an array of unified expressions. So rather than one spirit in a physical body, we have many different expressions of self, each of them considered its own type of soul or its own type of spirit, but that they are essentially unified. And the unification of these different aspects of self is what creates the whole being. It's what creates you. It's what makes you the unique person that you are. And as we explore these 11 parts of self in this class today, you'll see that each part kind of acts as a hologram of the whole, right? That when we look at one type of soul, we're really seeing a glimpse into the whole person through one particular perspective, one particular angle. And this is really, very interesting, especially when it comes to the Wortcunning healing traditions, that the understanding of what disease is, the understanding of what disharmony is, we would be thinking of that in terms of what part of self is this affecting? What part of my self, my unified whole, is being influenced negatively or is out of harmony with the other parts of me, right? And then it gives us this really clear way into healing, this really clear invitation of where the work needs to be done. So as we move through this conversation, I think you'll say, oh, okay, now I understand how herbal medicine and herbal magic and the practice of spiritual herbalism and Wortcunning could be applied exclusively to this one expression of self while also addressing the harmony of the whole. So that's where the conversation's going to go, again, focusing on two very specific parts of this towards the end. And when we get to that part of the conversation, I think you are going to be really excited about what we get to talk about. So let's begin from the beginning, the first of the aspects of soul, and that is the leech. And it is spelled L-I-C in Old English. We spell it this way to honor our herb-wise ancestors, but it is pronounced leech, like L-E-E-C-H. It is not connected to the blood-sucking leech. It's just they have the same word, the same sound. And the leech is the body physical. So here is an immediate divergence from the modern concepts of self, where the spirit and the physical body are two different things. The physical body dies, the subtle spirit transcends or moves on while the body returns to the land, because we are seeing that the body physical is being presented as an aspect of self. It's being presented as one of the souls that makes up who we are in this life. And of course, we know that the body physical is born, we grow and change, evolve and adapt over our lives. Our body goes through many iterations throughout our various ages. And then we die, right? And the body breaks down and returns to the earth, either by decomposition or fire. And so we know that that part of ourself is more changeable, right? It's less fixed than some of the others, because we experience every day that our leech, our physical body, changes. It's a different thing. We also have aspects of ourselves that don't change, right? That are more fixed, that are more permanent, or that are more transcendent to time or to phases. So the body physical is probably the aspect of self that we think of most in medical herbalism or medicinal herbalism. And it's oftentimes the part of ourselves that when something goes wrong, when there's a disease state or disharmony, when we are unhelu, right, when we are out of health, um, it's most obvious, right? Because we're in pain. Something's not working the way that it should work or the way that we're used to working. We can't do the things that we normally do. When the leech is struggling, it's hard for us to show up in the world the way that we normally do. We can't get things done. So now we want to talk just briefly again, just skimming the surface on 9 of these in order to get to the real nectar of this conversation, which comes later. But I want to mention what is the Wortcunning of leech. And that is anything that addresses the physical body. So we have nourishment, right? We have the herbs and the plants and the foods that we take in to nourish our physical body. Our body is made up of the things that we eat. So when we nourish ourselves mindfully, then our body is created and crafted from good building materials, good things. I also like to think about hydration, that the leech needs hydration in the form of water, but the leech also needs hydration in the form of oil. And this is why we see so many of our ancestral herbal medicines come in the form of an infusion, like a tea or tisane, right? But we also see infused oils that are applied to the skin, sometimes put into the ears or the nose, sometimes even eaten or ingested, because oil and water are both ways that the body gets hydration, gets a replenishment of vital fluids. This is very, very important. We have intentional movement. And I know that movement is not herbalism, it's not Wortcunning, right? But without movement, the body stagnates and we lose our flexibility. With what we don't use, we lose. And for me, the practice of Wortcunning as a spiritual path, as a path dovetailed with paganism, with animism, is an invitation for us to get out and connect with plants, right? Which means that we are out in a garden, we are walking on trails, we're walking through the forest or through meadows if we're able and if that's safe for us. So movement is also very important to the leech, to the overall health and strength of the leech, and attending to physical needs. And this is really one of the primary roots and the most celebrated aspects of both Wortcunning and contemporary even allopathic herbalisms, right? Is that something goes wrong with the body and we attend to those. And the leech invites us to do just that, to show up for ourselves. That when the leech, as an aspect of who we are, as an aspect of ourselves, gives us an alarm, a sign, a symptom, the leech is saying there is a problem. Something is not right. We need to focus on dealing with whatever this is. We need to bring all the aspects of self, however many there may be, back into a state of unified cohesion. We need coherence between the aspects of self. And so Wortcunning of leech is trusting the body, is listening to the body, and it's attending to the body, not ignoring, not demeaning, not finding guilt or shame when the body doesn't do what we want it to do, but seeing it as a part of our essential self, giving us communication saying, hey, we need to take action. And then, of course, we have the more everyday aspect of the medicinal application of Wortcunning, of herbal knowledge, which is navigating illness and injury with wisdom. We will get sick. It's part of being here. We will get injured. It's part of being here. And Wortcunning, our ancestral herbal traditions invite us to respond to illness, to respond to injury with the wisdom of plants, to invite them in, to allow them in, to help us regain our strength, get back to our version of center. So next up, we have the Hyge. And Hyge is another aspect of self that is non-physical. So here we're moving more into subtle aspects of self that might be a little more familiar to people that have contemplated what spirit is. And the Hyge represents thought. It represents what we think about. It represents how we invest thinking and processing and contemplating and meditating on things. And actually, even though we think, as Hyge, as rational thought, the linguistics behind this word actually have more to do with things that we care about. Hyge is linked to care for, right? And so one thing that I have come up with that sort of helps me reconcile Hyge as thought and Hyge as what we care about is that we tend to think about what we care about, right? If you are passionate about something, you allow for that thing to take up a lot of your thinking space. If you love somebody, you allow for that person to be someone you think about and contemplate and remember and meditate on. So Hyge is that part of ourselves that thinks about what we care about. And this seems very nuanced and it seems very specific, but it is an entirely unique part of the whole of who we are. What we invest energy in thinking about. And a lot of people, especially if you are like me or of the more airy type constitution, you know that what you think about can sometimes feel like it occupies its own world within you, right? That our thoughts can be their own level of reality within us. So it makes total sense to me that our ancient forebears said the Hyge is its own expression of self. It's its own point of contact with the wholeness of being. So how can we then explore, just as we did with the leech, this is the pattern we'll be doing in this class, the Wortcunning of Hyge? First, we want to think about the mind and heart connections, thinking about plants that help connect what we think about with what we feel about, right? This is very, very important. So these herbs that maybe drop us into heart center or open up the heart center or reconnect the thinking spaces with the feeling spaces. This is very important. And similarly, in the way that we choose to attend and show up for our physical body when our physical body gives us some communication, we should also be practicing the Wortcunning of Hyge by attending to our cares, by showing up for the things, the places, the people, the ideas that we care about, right? If we care about something, then it is worth showing up for. It is worth investing in. And so the Wortcunning of Hyge is about attending to one's cares, and of course doing that through working with particular herbal allies. Another thing that I think about is rationality and ritual, right? That when we do any of our Wortcunning rituals, or maybe any of your rituals around spirituality or the wheel of the year or paganisms or whatever you do, or maybe do not do, right? That we put thought into it. We rationalize. We say, does this thing make sense? Does this other thing feel like it goes here? Does what I'm thinking about have a place in the thing that I care about, right? And so adding rationality to our cunning workings is very much in the realm of Hyge in my experience and the way I experience this part of myself. And so very, very connected as well to Wortcunning. Next up, we have the Mynd. And if this word sounds familiar to you, this ancient word Mynd is, of course, the root of where we get our modern English word for mind. So Mynd is the seat of memory. And again, it is seen and experienced as being its own aspect of self. It's the part of us that lives in past. It's the part of us that lives in recollection. It's the part of us that draws from the well of everything that has happened previously that we use to inform, inspire what we do now and what we do in the future. So again, like the thinking space, we can get lost in the realms of memory. We can wander the realms and the landscapes of memory as if they were a completely different level of reality. And so it does make sense that the ancient wise ones would have said the memory, the Mynd, is its own aspect of self. Some part of us resides there, some part of the whole. And we can, of course, nourish and attend to our memory through the Wortcunning of Mynd. First and foremost, I think about blood against gravity, right? That our blood has to travel from the bottom of our feet all the way back up to the tops of our head in its cycle. And so when we are not receiving good oxygenation to the brain, good blood flow to the brain, and good energy flow in the brain, we are not nourishing the parts of us that hold and protect Mynd, protect memory. So we think about these cerebral blood flow increasing herbs. There are so many famous ones. We won't really be talking about individual herbs in this particular class because it would make it far too long, but rather just giving you broad areas to look at. So all of those nice blood movers, oxygen increasers for the brain, very, very good. And I also think about room for more, right? These herbs that give us a sense of expansion, that create space in the mind, that create space in the memory, that attend to our ability not only to draw on existing memories, but to create new ones, right? And we'll revisit this in different parts of the soul as well. But being mindful of memory is very important because everything that we remember, everything that's in that cache of memories is influential in how we do things now. And that will become more clear as we move towards those last 2 points that we'll get to. Next up, we have Willa. And if Willa sounds familiar, of course, is the root of our modern English word will. And Willa, of course, is our assertion and determination. And one very important aspect of Willa is that it is choice-based, right? We maybe not make a lot of choices about what memories we have. Sometimes it doesn't feel very choice-based about the thoughts that are happening in our head. Sometimes the things that happen with our leech, our physical body, don't feel like we chose them consciously. But Willa is specifically that. It's the things that we choose to assert our energy and influence on. It's the things that we determine we want to invest in, the things we determine are important and are worth our investment of time, energy, resources, care, thinking, all of that. So Willa is our will. It's our willfulness in the world. And this is the part of us that we extend sometimes outside of ourselves, but sometimes into the future, not literally, of course, but it's the part of us that we extend into what we determine to be, what we assert to be important. And it's almost like with Willa, that part of ourselves goes forth, stabilizes into that place that we intend, and then the rest of us steps in, the rest of the parts of us step in. So this is a really important aspect of the self and of the soul. The Wortcunning of Willa is a cultivation of good energy, right? In order to have will, to have the drive and the desire, the assertion and determination, we have to have energy. So when we are fatigued, frazzled, tired, and burned out, generally the Willa is one aspect of self that easily suffers. So we want to cultivate good energy by having good nourishment, by working with nourishing tonic herbs and foods, by making sure we're getting rest, by making sure we're getting recovery and downtime. This is all very important. Without rest and recovery, we don't gather back our vital force, which is the power that we will then use to project ourselves into what we will, right? So this is really important. I think about Willa being nourished by our nutritive herbs, our tonic herbs, and even our adaptogenic herbal allies. Very important. Next is Hama. And Hama, in contrast to the body physical with leech, is the body energetic. And we generally conceptualize and experience Hama as a membrane of power or energy, vibration or light that surrounds us like a shield, or sometimes traces our body like a tightly fitting skin suit, right? And Hama is the place where we stop and the rest of the world begins. It is a point of immunity where energetically we decide what is allowed in and what is pushed away, right? It's a point of contact where other stops being other and self stops being self. So this is a space of boundaries. This is a space of affirming who we are. This is a space of being sovereign within our own beings and having body autonomy, because the Hama is the hedge of protection that surrounds us. And of course, so much of the herbal work that we do can be around nourishing Hama, strengthening this space, making sure that it is in good repair. So the Wortcunning of Hama, as I mentioned, is very much about boundaries, working with our herbal allies that help strengthen boundaries, that help strengthen the body of light that surrounds us. Interestingly enough, and you'll hear me talk about this in many other classes, there is a similar concept in traditional Chinese herbalism with the Wei Qi, the effortless body of light, and certain tonic herbs that move directly into the Wei Qi, into that body of light to strengthen it, to patch and repair holes, to fix permeability, to help us understand that part of ourselves more, how we choose to let things in or not, consciously or not. We have to remember with the Hama, the reach of the heart, that the heart has 5,000 times greater electromagnetic field than any other oscillating force within the body. So our heart center reaches out further than the leech, further than the physical body. And it is the Hama that helps protect that. It stretches with that, right? It's part of us that can reach into otherness, extend into otherness. And we also have to remember that Hama has an influence on less about what happens internally and more about what happens on the surface of things, the part of us that meets the world, the aspect of self that encounters otherness, which is quite important in our Wortcunning work. Next, we have Mod, and Mod may sound familiar as well as the root of our modern word for mood. So Mod is the whole expression of self. This is all of the different parts of us kind of showing up as we are in the world. It's how other people perceive us. It's how we are expressing today. It's all the different parts of selves contributing everything into one sort of cauldron, and then whatever that elixir is being poured out into the world around it is my experience of Mod. And, this is important because other people experience the whole expression of ourselves as what mood we're in, right? So when we say, oh, she's in a really bad mood today, it means that the whole expression of herself is coming out in a way that looks like she's in a bad mood. And people can also say that we're in a very good or joyful mood that particular day. And we, of course, have the Wortcunning of Mod plants that can help us support this. First and foremost, I think about plant spirit allies, the plants that we have created a kinship and a closeness with. These are the allies that can help us explore the parts of ourselves that need better integration, that need better harmonization, that need to be made more coherent with the rest of us. I also think about the way that plants teach us partiveness, right? That we belong here, that we are part of nature, that we are, there is a space carved out in the worlds for us. And we also, have herbal allies that we think about as working on the Mod, that aspect of self that expresses. And maybe we would think about antidepressant herbs or anti-anxiolytic herbs or herbs that help cultivate joy and connection. All of these, I would think, would move into the body of Mod, the aspect of self that is our mood. We then have Wod, right? The fire of passions. This is a different part of self. It's the part where we hold the things that we're passionate about, that we burn for, that we invest energy into, and that we carve out space within ourselves for those things to reside, right? For them to live. And Wod is very important because as a very fiery type of aspect of self, it is our passions that light the way for the path ahead. Our passions define where we go next, what we're interested in, what we move towards, right? The light and the darkness. So we always want to ensure that the Wod is well cared for and that our passions are attended to. And sometimes, they need to be pacified a little bit and kind of turned down a little bit. But that's part of attending to them. And that's something that the herbs, of course, can support us with. The Wortcunning of Wod, blood building, right? To me, passions live in the blood, and we should always ensure that the blood is rich. If we're experiencing signs of blood deficiency, if the blood is weak, if there are deficiencies, then we can work with these nutritive blood building tonic herbs to do that. We also think about assimilation, the things that we take in being turned into our body, being turned into energy, being turned into power, that if assimilation is not good, then we don't have the ability to fire up our passions. So we want these digestive supporting plants, also thinking that fire lives in the belly as the fire of digestion. And also attending to your temperament. If you're a very watery person, you need to attend to your wateriness and work with herbs that nourish not only your innate wateriness, but check you against excess water or dryness, right? Your temperament is a very powerful aspect of self and a very deep invitation for us to have the plants show up for us. All right, things are going to get very interesting with this next one, our Fecce. And this is generally spelled Fetsh, as in like a dog going to fetch something, but the Old English spelling fetch itself is other. This is an aspect of us that is able to project or move outside of our immediacy. So the Fecce can, I believe, and I experience, move into different timelines, move into the future or into the past. And the Fecce can also move into spaces that are distant to where we are now. So maybe a good example of this is, let's say that you are planning with a great deal of intent. Your Hyge is on board, right? Your rational thought, thinking about what you care about, planning to be somewhere at a specific time. It's very possible and often common that the Fecce gets there before the rest of you. This aspect of yourself goes ahead and shows up and sort of plants in and starts establishing space for you before the other aspects of yourself, especially your leech, your physical body, arrives. And I often think that when the Fecce is in good repair and strong, that when we show up to spaces, we feel more grounded. We feel more welcome. We feel less jet lagged. We feel as though we're arriving into a space that is comfortable because some part of us has already gone there. I also mentioned that Fecce, I believe, can move into different timelines, right? So sometimes when we are really in Hyge and we're thinking, should I make this choice or this choice, right? Which is right? Sometimes the Fecce has the ability to move into those possibilities and gather information or stake a claim in that possible future, which I think is really interesting. And in most cases, and especially in the folklore, we experience Fecce as being the self as other. So very rarely when people have experiences of Fecce, do they see it as themselves moving in. Rather, we almost always experience the Fecce as an animal, right? So some animal that has a deep connection to who we are, that relates to who we are as a whole person, that we are connected to symbolically or maybe through constitution or temperament, is often how the Fecce shows up. So for example, if you had the Fecce of a boar, right, it would be as though a boar shows up into a particular space, carving the space for you, making room for you, and then the rest of you shows up. And we do, even though the fetch's self is other and the fetch tends to project non-locally, we have herbs that can help. And this is an interesting one because for me, the Wortcunning of Fetch focuses on allies of the Fetch form. So however, whatever form the Fetch takes, and sometimes we go to a seer that's able to tell us information about our Fetch. Sometimes we have personal intuitive experiences of the Fetch form. We want to think about herbs that our Fetch would have a connection to. For example, if your fetch was in the form of bear, you would think, what plants is bear in deep connection to? What plants do bears, gravitate towards? Which plants do they eat for nourishment? Which plants do they go to for medicine? And then think of safe and sound and creative ways to bring those herbs into nourishing your fetch, because how your fetch shows up does say something about you. And it does say something about how your fetch can be nourished, because there is a more literal link as well, I think, between your fetch form and the animal that your fetch form represents. So my fetch form tends to take shape as a bison. So you do with that whatever you want. Next, we have Aedem. And we don't have a lot of modern words for the Aedem, other than it is linguistically connected to the very profoundly, explored word from Hindu philosophy, Atma, which is a word for the self, the soul, Atma. So Atma is related to Aedem. They, of course, both come from the Indo-European root language. So there's a deep connection there, which is super cool. And the Aedem is a uniting breath. It is the breath, physical, but it is also the breath being used as a way to unite all of these different parts of self that we've talked about, right? They don't all exist in a vacuum. They don't all exist independently from one another. Rather, they are tied together, brought into cohesion, brought into coherence through the breath. And this is why breath is so important, right? That how we breathe can talk about how coherent we are as a person. And we see, of course, reflexes of this in, for example, heart math research that talks about the breath and the heart-brain coherence. But really, in my opinion, we can extend this to the entire self, that the breath is a uniting force that brings all of us into coherence. So how do we practice Wortcunning of Aedem? First, we can deepen the breath. We can, of course, explore how we breathe and if we breathe well and how we can breathe better. But we can also work with herbal allies that help take tension out of the pectoral region of the body, right? Tension out of the pleural cavity. Maybe the tension and tightness is in the diaphragm, and the diaphragm is not able to bellows down with effortlessness. And so there's tension and tightness in the breath. These herbs are generally softening, generally moistening. They really play towards the strengths of the lungs and the preferred energetic atmosphere of the lungs. And it's very, very important when the breath is restricted, when the breath is constricted or stagnated in any way, we want to consider the plants that can help us deepen the breath. We also want to think about something that I talk about all the time, right? Because breathing to me is a ritual with the plants that's always happening. We want to think about the ritual of respiration, right? We want to invest into the ritual of respiration, that what we inhale is a gift from the plantkin and what we exhale is a gift to the plantkin. So the ritual of respiration can actually being mindful of the breath, dropping into the breath can actually bring healing to the Aedem. And then as a side effect, which is very important, bring more cohesion and more coherence to all of the different parts of self so that we're acting as one unified whole. And this is very, very important. Moving forward, we've now talked about enough aspects of the self that you have an idea of how these parts of ourselves fit together, what they look like on their own, what they look like as parts of the whole. But there are two aspects of self and of person and of power and of path that I really want to focus on in this class. And finally, we've laid the groundwork to get to them. And those two are Orlaeg and Maegen. And these are so powerful in our spiritual practice, in our practice of selfhood, in our practice of being who we are, that this is really what I wanted this class to be about. So we're finally here. We're going to get into some good stuff and explore two aspects of self that continually fascinate me and are so important in the way that I practice the cunning arts. So we will start with Orlaeg. Orlaeg is the well of pattern and potential. So think about everything you've ever done, every action you've ever taken, everything you've ever said, everything you've ever thought, being real, right? Having real meaning in the universe, and that there being a well that all of that gets plowed into. So every action you've ever taken, right? Every expenditure of energy, and we'll talk about energy more in the next couple of slides with Mayen, is all in there somewhere. None of it dissipates. Everything has meaning. Everything has validity, right? In the grand scheme of the universe, but also in the grand scheme of who you are as an individual. That's very cool. This well of pattern and potential is made up of everything that we have ever done. It is a well from which everything we do now and everything we can do in the future draws from. And so this is very important because it means that everything we do has gravity. Everything we do means something. We don't just get to behave however we want and move on. What we do now defines what we're able to do in the future. It defines what the tree of our being has to draw on in its next phase of growth. It's also important with Orlaeg to remember that Orlaeg is not exclusively about you. It's not in a vacuum, meaning everyone's Orlaeg overlaps. So when you enter into deep relationship and kinship with other people, their Orlaeg actually can affect yours and yours can affect them. So when we marry someone, when we enter into an oath binding with somebody, when we join an initiatory spiritual group with other people, their individual Orlaegs create a collective Orlaeg that then influences everybody. So we, of course, want to be very careful about whose Orlaeg we take on, right? Who we want to be influenced by. And by the way, one thing that often comes up in this conversation about Orlaeg is, well, what about kids, right? What about the day you're born and you haven't your parts of self are not really all online and activated. You're not taking really conscious actions. It's all very instinctual. Our initial Orlaeg is laid by our parents, our foundation by our nearest ancestors. So you start out coming in with the people who came before you and then slowly transition into taking over your own Orlaeg, right? So this is why we see, the ways of our parents and our grandparents and great-grandparents have influence over who we are as a person, and then we step more into being who we choose to be. So Orlaeg is the well of patterns and potentials that we draw on based on everything we've ever done. They exist personally, but they also overlap infinitely. And believe it or not, there are ways that we can work our Wortcunning in service of the Orlaeg. So the Wortcunning of Orlaeg for me is rooted in purification and cleansing. And I don't mean this in a spring detox, purify the liver, cleanse the blood kind of thing, although what we do on the physical certainly influences the subtle. What I want to bring up in relationship to Orlaeg, something that is very part of Wortcunning, is very part of sin eating traditions. It's very part of many of our sacred plant medicine working traditions, is the purification and cleansing of guilt, of shame, of less than. We have to forgive ourselves and make peace and choose better and different with the things that we have put into that well of Orlaeg. If we dwell on things that we've done in the past that no longer align to our values now, or maybe when we did them, they didn't align to our values and we acted out of a place of fear or anger or trauma or confusion, and we carry that and we keep feeding it, then we keep that pattern strong. We will unconsciously, through the effects of the Hyge, right, keep perpetrating that pattern. So we will keep drawing the pattern of the thing that we did that does not align to our values, and then do things again that don't align to our values, which then strengthens the pattern of the well of Orlaeg that we're drawing from, right? See how that all goes together? So we have to work with plants, especially trees, to purify, to feel clean, to feel like we can let go of what we've done in the past and be who we choose to now, and put into the well of Orlaeg what we want to put in now, what feels good now, because what we're doing now is what we'll be drawing off in the days and years and decades ahead, right? We can change these patterns. We can change what is put in there. If the well of Orlaeg is predominantly, of patterns that you don't super love, and everything that's happening in your life is drawing off of these, disharmonious, unhelu states, then as we keep putting positive, beautiful, healthy, helu things in there, eventually that will become the dominating force, and that will be what's informing everything that happens for you, right? So this is very important. I also think about oath binding, right? Making promises to yourself, to your ancestors, to the plant spirits, to the deities that you work with, that you will do better, that you will change, that you will try, right? To make these promises, to put them down in oath, gives them gravity, and also opens us up to receive blessings to help support that happening, right? Which is really good. Nootropics, right? This is a category of herbs that help with brain plasticity, that help keep the brain soft clay rather than solid. We want soft clay brain because we want to be able to ease out patterns that no longer serve us and carve in new patterns that we choose for ourselves. And if things get dried out and hard up there, very, very difficult to do things differently, to get out of the old pattern of Orlaeg and into the new pattern of Orlaeg. So these nootropic herbs that we work with very much help that. And we need to be mindful that nootropics, like adaptogens, become part of the modern tradition that we call botanicals, where every herb is a nootropic, and you're supposed to take as many as you possibly can and stack all of them. That's not the way of nootropics. They're soft, right? They're gentle, they're transformative. So, however you connect with nootropic herbal medicine, get good information. Avoid the gym nootropic formulas and the brain hacking stuff. That's not it. That's not the medicine. So, with Orlaeg in place, now we get to move on to Maegen. And Maegen is our vital force. It's our life energy. It's akin to prana, chi, right? This is the power of self, the power of body. And it is also the power to be and do, right? It's the power for us to be who we are in this moment, and the power for us to do what we want to do. And guess what? Maegen is influenced by Orlaeg, right? How our Orlaeg manifests, whether it manifests in good ways or bad ways, whether it manifests in affirming, positive, building experiences or ones that are detrimental influences how we can hold life energy, right? Hopefully that makes sense. So the amount of Mayan that we're able to hold is influenced by what we do, what we say, and what we think. How we show up in the world has long-term effects on who we are as people, and maybe even past the release of leech, even past death. I think there could be influence there. So there's this Old English term "schild," right, which is where we get our modern English word "should," and we should schild. Schild is paying debts and obligations. It's when we recognize that we have behaved in a way that is not in line with our values, and that we should do something to repay that debt or to make it right. And generally that's with ourselves, right? We're just saying, that didn't feel good. I didn't like how that thought felt in my head. I didn't like how I reacted to that person or what I said. I didn't like how I treated that person. So I'm making a schild, an oath of repayment to myself that I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to recognize that there's an obligation to show up, because again, your Orlaeg affects other people's Orlaeg too. So it's not about you. This doesn't happen in a vacuum. You are a tree in the forest, right? So the schild then allows us to release and purify and atone and create more space for Mayan, which is good because more energy is more energy. And we have the Wortcunning of Mayan, attending to stress, trauma, and anxiety. Stress, trauma, and anxiety in my practice as a modern Wortcunning practitioner is one of the leading reasons why people are low in vital force. Stress patterns, trauma points, anxiety reactions all take up space and all bind us and prevent Mayan from flowing through us effortlessly the way that it should. So we need to attend to these feelings. We need to respond to them. We need to ask them what they mean. What are they communicating to us? Where do they come from? How can we show up for that part of ourselves? One of the most powerful things about this multi-soul concept is it allows the parts of us that are thriving to show up for the parts of us that are not, right? Rather than saying, I'm just this one person different than a body, and my body is sinful and I'm going to get rid of it one day anyway. So why does it matter? I'm just going to ignore the pain or repress the pain or numb the pain. That doesn't work in this model. In this model, there will always be parts of us that say, hey, I can show up for this aspect of self that's struggling right now, right? And I just think that's so powerful and so affirming. So adaptogenic herbs that help protect us from the damaging effects of everyday stress, will always lead to a cultivation of Mayan, a cultivation of vital force. Tonic herbs that help the body, tropho-restorative herbs that help the body and various processes and functions in the body work at their best, right? This is good. And again, it comes back up under Mayan. Rituals of confession and repattering. Go talk to trees. Go tell trees your problems. Go tell trees, here's what I did. It didn't feel good. I want to do things differently, but I don't want to carry this around because I don't want this to be the pattern that I start reenacting. I don't want this to set the tone for my well of Orlaeg. I don't want this to inform my now. And we're going to talk about what is now here in a couple slides. Get it off your chest. If you don't feel safe talking to another human, which I highly suggest, I'm a huge fan of therapy. Go to therapy if you can. Go talk to a tree. Trees will listen. They will be patient. We do a ritual of circumambulation where we walk clockwise around a tree many, many, many times, breaking bonds, releasing ties that bind, forgiving ourselves, forgiving other people, letting shit go. Confession. I know that word is so charged because of its use in Christianity and Catholicism, where it's used as a thing where, you're doing it because you're a bad person. I'm not saying you're a bad person at all. And neither is the system. The system is saying sometimes we do things that don't align to our values. And then we recognize it with a different part of ourselves. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel beautiful. It doesn't feel coherent. And so we do something about it. That's not shame. That's empowerment, right? That's saying, yeah, I confess I acted against myself. True sin is things done against the true self, right? Not so much against other people. And then we repattern. We change the state of the well of Orlaeg. That's very, very important. So look, all these 11 different aspects of self that we just looked at, all making one person, right? Some of them are very close to us. We have the physical body, we have our mode, our mood, we have the Hama, the membrane of energetic light that surrounds us, our Mynd, our mind, our thought, our will, our memory. We have the Fecce, the part of us that projects into non-local times and spaces, the Aedem, which brings it all together into one unified whole. We have the Orlaeg, the effects of what we do, and the Maegen, our ability to hold vital force. But there's still one more aspect that isn't part of the self. It's part of the cosmos. It's the way that self interacts with cosmos, and that is the word. This word gets translated and pronounced as weird all of the time because of the Y, but the Y actually makes a short U sound. It's word. And it is, by the way, where we get the modern English word weird. When something weird happens, the word is at play. And the word is everything that has been done is doing, right? It's everything in your Orlaeg being manifest in this moment. It's everything you've ever done leading up to this second. Who you are, how you are, where you are, what you are, right? And so the word is everything done is being done. Everything done is doing. And everything nourishing is being. What we are nourished by, what we draw from the well of Orlaeg is who we become. So herein lies a little bit of a dichotomy, a choice to be made. We can either feel victim-y and say, well, everything that's happening to me right now, it's because of my Orlaeg and there's nothing I can do about it. Things, it is what it is. Things are what they are. And that's true. That's one way to look at it. But we can also see this for what it is. This is the universe, the cosmos, telling us you have control. You have the ability to decide what gets laid into the pattern of Orlaeg. What will it be? I'm not saying it's easy. Some of us have to go to years and years and years of therapy, years of working with plants, years of working on ourselves to start being better, to start doing different, to stop reacting with anxiety or anger or trauma or fear. But every time we take a little step further, what we're putting in the Orlaeg changes a little bit, and we're changing what we have to draw on, right? And again, remember, a little bit of your ancestors is mixed in there too. So we've got to deal with that. They become more and more dilute as we get older and older, but it's always there. So we have so much power. We have so much control about what now looks like in the future. The future now is being laid into pattern in the current now. And so don't let yourself fall into, I'm stuck. This is how it is. There's nothing I can do about it. There's a ton you can do about it. You can pray to the old gods. You can go out in nature and feel connected. You can drink herbal tea. You can take a breath. You can forgive yourself. You can forgive other people. You can ask other people for forgiveness. You can make amends. You can choose to wake up every day and be a better version of yourself, to look at the parts of yourself, the different aspects of soul that we've talked about today that need some attention, and attend to them with love and compassion. And then your nows moving forward are going to start getting better. You're going to start getting different. The moment is omen in Wyrd, right? Whatever is happening right now is omen. It tells us something about where we're going and where we've been. You can look at every instant like a tarot card, right? What is the scene? How does it make me feel? What does it imply? What comes up for me? What does it say about what informed it? and what does it say about what's coming next, and what am I going to do about it? That's the most important thing, right? Nothing set in stone. Everything. We look at all the lore around Wyrd, around Maegen, around Orlaeg, always talking about things being watery, things being fluid, things being in a well or a cauldron, things being trees that are growing, new branches, new leaves. We're never hearing things being talked about like rocks and mountains. They're not set in stone. If they were, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now, right? So what about the Wortcunning of Wyrd? What is done at the tree is done at the center of the universe. If you have an omen happening in your life right now that is disturbing to you, that doesn't feel right, it's a card you did not want to pull, it's a card that you do not choose for yourself, go sit at the tree, either literally in person, ideally one you're friends with, or internally if that's what you can do, and reflect. What does this mean? Talk to the trees, because what we do at a tree, we do at the center of the universe. When we sit with trees, we're connected to everything below, the past, what we draw on, and everything above, what we're growing towards and fruiting towards. The tree will show us how the past, the Orlaeg, influences the now, the Wyrd, and influences the flow of vital force, Mayan, our power, right? So go sit with trees, go touch grass. I know it seems like the stupidest, most dismissive answer, but we keep saying it because it works, right? The prescription is good for everybody all the time. We can also, in the moment when Wyrd is expressing itself, just choose to create beauty, create harmony, and create rightness with what you have. If you just got dealt a really shitty card and the omen is not good and things are not feeling great, how can you wedge in something beautiful to this moment, right? And maybe your resources are real low. Maybe your energy is real low. Maybe your shits to give are real low, but find something beautiful to do. Maybe that's going out for a walk in nature, smelling flowers, making tea, doing something nice for somebody else, taking a nap, doing something nice for yourself. Whenever the omen is dire for me, I always think, how can I bring medicine here? Right? Because this feels unharmonious to me. This feels unhalu, unhealthy. How can I create halu here? How can I create rightness, beauty, harmony? Right? And I always feel better. So here's this little tree concept. Just to kind of wrap this all up. This is our second to last slide. We're almost done. Orlaeg, everything that the tree is drawing up to grow. The tree is made out of what it gathers from its roots, the soil and the water below. This is our Orlaeg, everything done, everything said, and everything thought. As that tree grows, it grows with vital force, the Mayan. The power that the tree has defines what the tree is capable of doing, right? How hard can it push? How tall can it grow? How many flowers? How many fruits can it make? And the Wyrd is that canopy of the tree. What is blossoming now? What is happening now? What are we expressing? What has come to fruition? We say this. What has come to fruition? Fruit, right? We're using tree language all the time to talk about, these deep spiritual mysteries. So this whole over hour-long class has really been about talking about Orlaeg, Maegen, and Wyrd, and how they relate to our practice of Wortcunning. I hope that this was not too rambly, and that you got something good out of it. If nothing else, a little permission to be yourself, to love yourself, and to attend to all 11 plus parts of your being. With that, thank you so much for hanging out with me for this class and all the classes. I do a free class every single Friday right here on the YouTube. There's over 200 other classes on my channel available right now. So please go enjoy, leave comments, hit the like button. Let me know you're there. If you want to connect and support my work or get access to our monthly plant spirit journeys, our advanced classes and courses, all of those can be found on our Patreon. Incredible community as well. You'll talk to some of the coolest people that you'll ever meet. I've written 2 books, Spiritual Herbalism and The Green Art, both of them available wherever you buy books. And if you want to send me a little love, a little thanks for this class, down below the video, just click on that thanks button and you can do so. That means a lot to me as well. Thank you guys so much. Wes Hall, blessings of peace and plenty. I'll see you next time.